So introduce yourself and what you coach.
My name's Sean Skye. I'm an assistant professor at Mount Royal, and I'm the head coach of the men's volleyball team.
What was the biggest coaching meltdown you have witnessed?
Witnessed, like personally been involved in,
No, just
or
witnessed.
overall? Well, there's been a number. I mean, in terms of witnessing, I mean, I think if anybody watches the TSN or anything else, I mean, I can remember there's been a couple of hockey coaches that obviously absolutely lost it in terms of checking hockey sticks and everything else. In terms of my own personal sport, I've definitely seen some before. I mean, I've actually been a part of some before where have I kicked the ball before? Absolutely. Have I also, slammed, say my coaching book? Is any of it appropriate? No. Does it take place? Yes.
So what was the reaction of the media or the people that experienced the meltdown?
Well, there's typically two reactions. There's humor, because I mean, when somebody completely loses it, and especially if it's up on TV and whatnot, it's funny. That's after the fact. During, quite frankly, I think it's probably embarrassment, because now that person is very passionately involved. And I'm even speaking of like when I've had a meltdown. Emotion takes over, so you're not thinking clearly, and after the fact, when you look at your actions, especially if it's your own self that's done it, it's embarrassing because they're inappropriate.
What was your biggest meltdown to date?
In recent years, thankfully, there hasn't been many. When I first truly got into coaching, and I've lost before. I've actually been kicked out of a match before, and that's just for complaining to a referee, and it was in a pressure situation. But I definitely lost my focus, and I didn't think the referees were being fair. It doesn't really matter that they were or they weren't. I was in the wrong, and I was actually detrimental to my team.
What was the reaction of your team to the outburst?
I think the reaction is just what every single team is a distraction, is really what it is. I mean, there's a time and a place for it. If you need to slow down the match, but there's also a proper way of doing it, where you properly respect the sport. And anything that's disrespectful to the sport or disrespectful for the people in attendance is never appropriate. Some people talk about there being gamesmanship involved and everything like that. Yes and no to a certain degree. Might I, for instance, and you know this being on the men's volleyball team, I've told you guys sometimes that if we're out of timeouts, I may start questioning the official, okay, to slow the match down to gain the match. If it's tactful, there's a certain amount of acceptance to it, but at the same time too, it's if you do it again and again and again, you lose respectability. Not just of your team, but also of anybody else that's a part of the sport.
How did the referee react to you being kicked out of the game?
Well, obviously they'd had enough, and it didn't matter whether it's right or wrong. In most cases, a lot of times when you have a meltdown, it's a matter of perception. Is really what it is. So I don't even think of it in terms of right or wrong. One person has a perception, especially if we're talking about an environment where everybody's aroused. Like there's an emotional attachment to it. There's a crowd, playoff ramifications, stuff like that. So a coach is going to have a certain perspective, and that's their perception. A referee is going to have a perspective and their perception. And you typically, when you have real issues, is when both people believe they're right. And so if it's a case where now if the coach gets far too emotionally involved, I've never seen a referee after a coach freaked out and went, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, I'll change it, okay? Quite frankly, the opposite happens, and everybody gets defensive, and that's when you get run, and you see it in baseball and everything else like it. Now, even at the same time, you'll see baseball managers come on, and they're coming up with the purpose and intent to be run, because they actually want to stand up for their teammate, or say they want to stand up for one of the players. And a lot of times you'll actually see, especially in baseball, a manager will actually come out and personally take that and be kicked out of the game because he's fearful that it's actually going to happen to his athlete. He'd rather have himself kicked out than have one of his best players kicked out of the game.
Was there any consequences after you got removed from the game?
Well, you know what I mean. There wasn't any league ramifications. But there's personal embarrassment too. I mean, you have reflection, just like anything else you do in life, where if you overreact, you take some time, you reflect, and so in one of the cases, I actually contacted the official and apologized after the fact. There's another case where I got kicked out where I still, if the official was here, I mean, we still would have our personal differences, but that's a case again where perceptions are that strong either way that I had real issues with it, and that the individual had issues as well. So that was over 10 years ago, and now I don't think that will ever be resolved.
So do you think the reaction you had, if you could go back, would you change it?
In the one case, in the one situation where our difference was resolved, most definitely. In the other case, no. No, because it was to me, it was more of a stand of respect for my team, and I truly believe and still do believe that my team was being disrespected. So it wasn't about me, and so I was actually going to stand up for that. And yeah, it was a case where, you know, I'd say 98, 99% of the time, the coaches are wrong. There's that 1% of the time where, again, you truly do have to make up that stand, and if one team is being favored, you need to say so. But again, most of the time, the coach's perception is actually skewed, and they're just emotionally attached, and they're looking for a reason or frustration. A lot of time is what it actually is you're frustrated with your team's play, you're frustrated with your own coaching ability, and the easiest person to act out on is the official.
So do you believe the reaction you had at that point in time where you thought maybe it was more important to react out, do you think it was important for the team's future or detrimental?
That's all a matter of perception, right? And what I mean is at that point after the fact, and it's going to be differing. So I know what my intention was, but what's more important is what my athletes and what my student athletes' perception was. There were some of them that perceived it as being the right thing. There's some of them kind of, it was a total distraction to it. So there's not a surefire black and white yes or no answer there. Because again, what intentions really don't matter. Perception is really what does. Now, if your entire team perceives that was a good thing, not just in the moment, but 2 days, 2 weeks later, then yes. But again, in an emotional situation, if everybody maybe perceives at that moment, yeah, that's the right thing, 2 days later, you always know, because when things settle down, when all of a sudden now you don't have the same emotional attachment, you know right or wrong.
Perfect. That's it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Another coach, it would be in hockey where a coach completely lost it and all the sticks and everything went on the ice and he was just out of control and his players didn't quite know what to do, because if you're a player, I want to play, I can't really say anything. So that was the worst. You mean like on video or TV or?
Just anything that you've seen that you think.
There's been some beauties in baseball, you know, where the coach picks up the first base and second base and third base and throws them all in the dugout, takes all the bats and smashes the water cooler, and gets pretty mean.
What was the reaction of the media or the people that experienced the meltdown?
I think people in retrospect, they look back on it like it's dangerous. There's a lot of implications there, and they shouldn't be exhibiting this kind of behavior. But at the time, I think everybody thinks it's pretty funny, because people like you laugh at the Three Stooges, you laugh at what's that show, Jackass. Like something crazy's happening. America's Home Funniest Videos. You laugh at that stuff, and but then you think after, it's like sometimes it's, what are you really laughing at? When you find out it's sort of yourself as a human being, that's sad.
What was your biggest meltdown to date as a coach?
We've talked about this. The biggest one was in a tournament in Red Deer where I got thrown out of the gym because I got a yellow card and a red card and then all sorts of red cards and every card in the deck or whatever, and which means I'm banished from the gymnasium, and I refused to go. And I started shaking the referee's stand, and he said, "Get out of the gym." And I said, "You get down here." And he knew if he got down there, and I probably would have done something really stupid, like I'd lost it. And And even to the point where, like, I wouldn't get out of the gym, which means my team should forfeit that match and everything. And he didn't know what to do, the young referee, and I wouldn't go. And so to continue the match, once to continue the match, it had to work in the standings. We did win. But then I got my knuckles wrapped by the ACAC and stuff. I got suspended for 3 matches.
What was the reaction of your team to that outburst?
I think they thought it was pretty funny, but I'd had enough, and it wasn't my first yellow or red card from this individual. It was somebody that's young that wants to assert himself on the referee stand. Like used to bother me in junior hockey. You know, some referee in hockey, and I don't mean to discriminate against size, but somebody about 5'4" that probably has a clerk's job all day long, and that gets into a situation where he can invigilate sending these guys he resents because of their height and athleticism, whatever, and he can send them to the sin bin and do all this kind of stuff. It's a power thing, and that's what I resented. It wasn't, there was one play that we were doing, which was quite acceptable if you kept up with the game. It'd be like you going to the country and you're coaching and you put a libero in, and the guy has only read a rule book from 1970, and he says, you can't do that. Now how do you react? You know,
How did the fans react?
well, we're talking Alberta colleges. There weren't a lot of fans there anyway. So it'd be a lot of teams because it was tournament play then. They were watching it. And most of them, because we were winning, most of them were hoping I would get thrown out for years. Okay, but then in the end, it was just it was a travesty. It was silly for all concerned. He lost it, I lost it, we all lost it. It was stupid from the get-go.
Was there any consequences other than the 3-day suspension, like coming back to the school board? Was there anything?
Oh, no, it was college. It wasn't the school board. So, no, I got reprimanded a little bit here, but I don't pay attention to that stuff.
Do you regret the reaction you had, and would you change anything if you could go back?
That was my last year, Colton. Like, I realized then that I just can't, even getting on a bus to go to Medicine Hat. You put me on a bus at noon right now to go to Medicine Hat, and I got nothing against Medicine Hat, but I'll contemplate ritual suicide. Like, all that stuff just starts to get to you, and now I'm married, I got a couple kids, and I got a whole different thing going on, that it was just time to go. And part of that, a major part of that, is I just couldn't put up with this stuff anymore. And we're used to get around it, and you're young and you're ambitious and whatever, and then now I'm at that point is I realize that there's a part of me that's got a little dynamite keg on it, and if I keep doing this, that fuse is getting shorter and shorter.
Do you believe the reaction was important or detrimental to the team's
Oh,
future?
important. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think it was important. I'm just not going to put up with it anymore. The carding system, there wouldn't be a match I didn't get a yellow card. But it was my thing and how far to push it, and I'm paying attention to the referee. And like, it's just watching your guys' game on Friday night, you know, where all you say to the referee is, when you check with the linesman, which any referee worth his salt, and I refereed for years too, that, okay, but now you're questioning my authority, I'm going to give you the card, and the card thing has changed. Now you gotta, don't you lose a point or lose a possession or something like that. And that didn't even happen. So the guy was using it as a power thing, not even knowing full well what it is. But my point was, you're watching me, I'm watching you too. You know, that I'm not going to let you get away with this, so it's going to cost a card. But I always felt it was worth it.
And that's it. Thanks.
Okay.